Okay, I'd like to call the Economic Development Task Force meeting to order. I'd like to first recognize that we are on the traditional unceded territory, the Nunavut First Nations, on which we thank them for living, working, and playing. And I'd like to first look at any introduction of late items.
Yes, we're adding agenda item 7C1, the City of Nanaimo's Economic Development 2021 Work Plan from Lionsgate Consulting.
Thank you. And adoption of agenda as amended. Moved by somebody, Jim. Seconded by Kathy. All those in favor? Thank you. Adoption of the minutes. Somebody, so moved by Bob, seconded by William. All those in favor? Thank you. And we'll go straight into reports with Mr. Corson.
Thanks, Chair. I might just remove my mask so you can hear me a bit. So yeah. That's okay with you. Sorry folks, just a technical glitch here. Next one. Share screen. So I just wanted to go through a quick presentation. This is one that largely the same presentation that we provided to council at the GPC. So since our last task force meeting, the draft strategy was brought to council on December the 14th at we call it Governance and Priority Committee meeting, which gives council a chance to have a little more discussion about topics. We presented the work that the task force has done. At that point, council asked us to head back out to our stakeholders to get final feedback from you and then to come back to council. So this is the presentation I provided to council. We did, Alyssa sent the material to everyone to get feedback. We received comments from a few people. We've incorporated those. We've also been receiving some feedback just recently, and as we go through this, we'll speak to those specific issues. And then we'll be seeking your endorsement of the plan as amended at the end of this presentation. We'll be able to see if people have questions as we go along, please. Alyssa's going to try to set up so we can see you.
Oh, okay.
One more to the right, we'll show them.
There we go. Okay. So if you need me to stop at some point, maybe just point. You won't be able to see everybody. Just maybe provide some feedback. Let us know that you want to raise your hand or speak. Okay. So when we presented to council, we talked about the task force mandate. We talked about the actual economic development strategy, the process we went through. We talked about some of the priorities and the principles, strategies. We talked to council about the charter and then next steps. So that's what we'll go through this afternoon with you. I think everyone here is well aware this task force existed for two reasons, and that was to prepare the economic development strategy and to kind of flesh out the details of the agency. And I think we're pretty close. Hopefully at the end of the day we've achieved those goals, and this is could be our last meeting if the task force agrees to that. So the strategy, the framework we worked to with Lionsgate Consulting, the firm that the task force hired to help us with, was to give us a bit of a roadmap, make sure that the benefits are shared, and there's collaboration with all our partners, and then we bring in economic reconciliation. The timeline for the strategy is 3 to 5 years, and we've done our best to connect this strategy and with other initiatives going on in the city, including the larger Reimagine Nanaimo process, the Mayor's Task Force on Economic Resiliency, and of course the Health Housing Task Force. And that's been an interesting process because these initiatives have emerged as we've been working on our strategy and we've incorporated them in. And Councillor Martin mentioned to me also the importance of the donut economy and how we were able to incorporate that towards the latter stages of the strategy as well. So in terms of the process, remember Lionsgate did prepare something called the Current Situation Report, and that has about 100 pages of analysis on the economy and where we're at, and it's a very useful tool for us internally in the city as well as for the agency as a starting point on some of the key background information we need to know about our city and region. We were lucky we actually had face-to-face focus groups in June, and we also did a scenario planning workshop that involved around the impact of COVID and what that meant for the strategy. And that was to enable Lionsgate to help map out the specific actions we'd be taking later in the strategy. We did a survey with the business community, and that was done electronically to get their feedback on priorities. And then we were able to leverage the work we were doing through Reimagine Nanaimo, which is our larger OCP Parks Rec Master Plan Active Transportation engagement process, to get feedback from folks from the wider community, which we wouldn't normally get involved in economic development strategy. We had about 400 people specifically do the economic development survey, which was really helpful, which was a nice addition to this. Remember in September, we had a series of workshops talking about our specific priorities and the actions we want to undertake, and that was used to create the draft strategy that we have in front of us. And from my perspective, I want to appreciate everyone's help and time you've taken to contribute to the task force. And we've had many meetings, and my microphone's on. Thank you. Okay, probably hear me better now. So I just want to thank everyone for your participation in the task force and the feedback you've given us, whether it's through the individual one-on-one comments or whether it's through the workshops and events you've attended. So you remember Lionsgate did a strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats analysis, and I think this is very consistent with other plans that we've done from an economic development perspective. And I won't necessarily go through all them. Some things that really stick out of, I think I always like to look at the opportunities, and I think this time around there's much more opportunity for the idea of the First Nations partnerships, and certainly COVID's brought to us the remote working opportunities. I think downtowns, I think is kind of at the turning point where I think it's about to really get going. So it's really exciting how we can take that, and certainly technologies at a place now where we can grasp those opportunities. So in terms of, when we presented this to council, I think they were quite interested in terms of the difference in priorities or even the alignment in priorities between the business community and the wider community. And we used these to help draft the strategy and help give us some focus as to where people wanted us to spend our time and energy. The plan was focused around 6 guiding principles, and those include partnerships, so making sure that we work together to maximize the opportunities we can get from collaboration and from leveraging our resources. The idea of focusing on local, so making sure that we help our local community first. We certainly want to attract people to Nanaimo, but making sure that we, through business retention expansion and getting to know our community better, that we can focus on local activities. The idea that the work we do has a long-term impact, not just short-term impacts on the community. The idea of authenticity was one of the more interesting comments that came out through our focus groups, you remember, and I think we had a long discussion about, what is Nanaimo and where does Nanaimo want to go? And I don't know if we've actually solved that. And I think that's something we'll be working on with the agency and internally as we go forward. But a very interesting piece about where does Nanaimo want to head. And that's very interesting enough in the last 2 strategies as well. Hopefully that's something we can get to. I think we are, again, really at the point where there's a lot of opportunity for Nanaimo. There's a great chance to harness that. And then we talked about equity and reconciliation, which again is a very important guiding principle as we move forward, whether that's economic reconciliation and equity, but also I think through the Health and Housing Task Force, there was a good discussion about equity and making sure that the benefits of economic development reach everyone in the community, not just a select few.
And then we had the discussion about the circular economy and the idea that there's an opportunity to make sure that the economic benefits, as much as they can, stay in Nanaimo and lead to spin-offs within the community. In terms of goals, we set 6 goals as well, and the whole strategy, as you know, is centered around these 6 goal areas, which are economic capital, business development, human capital, innovation technology, social and development capital, and placemaking and attraction. And we're going to go through each of those in discussion as we go along here. So in terms of economic capital, we identified 7 areas that we wanted to put a focus on. The Lionsgate believes one of the first priorities is developing a community infrastructure plan. I think all of us around the table know, I think we each have our own goals for infrastructure. City certainly has its own. I know the port has one, VIU has one, the hospital has one, the school district has one. So it'll be a chance to actually put all those in context and see which comes to the rise to the top. Through our Reimagine Nanaimo process, we did a land inventory analysis and looked at all our lands, including industrial and commercial. And one of the key issues was how do we that we don't quite have enough employment lands, and how do we ensure that we preserve those employment lands and find more employment lands to ensure business has a place to operate in Nanaimo. The downtown and waterfront's always been a priority, and that's recognized in here, whether it's Port Drive or the Waterfront Walkway or revitalizing the Stewart Channel, all important areas. Transportation, cargo, and logistics for Vancouver Island is a very important one, where we have the port and the airport, the city, Nanaimo, and all our private businesses that worked on the logistics of Nanaimo and take advantage of that strategic location. So we have a series of actions in there. Broadband's come up in the past. It's come up again. The city was able and fortunate to be able to have an arrangement with TELUS to do the pure fiber agreement throughout the community. But the Connected Coast Broadband initiative will be coming to Nanaimo next year or two, and there's an opportunity for the city to have dual redundancy in terms of fiber, and opportunity to actually maybe create some economic opportunity for the city and the residents of the city out of that fiber. So that's something we certainly want to look at. And then we also have VIU, who's looking at some initiatives on high-speed Wi-Fi, which is very exciting. That could really help stimulate downtown and help Nanaimo and the university as well. So we're looking forward to working on those initiatives the next couple of years. The tourism product one is an interesting one. I think, as most people know, on the task force, in the last couple of years, tourism has been operated through Tourism Vancouver Island and in a partnership with the Nanaimo Hospitality Association. The strategy, as written, recognizes those entities and that relationship. Just before Christmas, we found out that Tourism Vancouver Island was no longer going to provide that service. So at what we'd like to do is just amend section 1.6 of the strategy to, most of section 1.6 is still consistent and still meets the goals, but we just need to make a few amendments to 1.6 to reflect the relationship of tourism at the moment and where we're heading. So happy to discuss that with you, but I just see that as a few little tweaks. The overall goals and objectives, I believe, remain the same. And then the whole idea of really leveraging the opportunity from the hospital and all the healthcare professionals we have in Nanaimo, and making sure that Nanaimo takes full advantage of the opportunity we have here to be a healthcare center of excellence. Human capital, we have 3 areas that we'd like to work on. Again, this is a great partnership for industry and for VIU and the agency and the city to work on education and training and making sure we have the right workforce for the jobs that are here and for the jobs that are going to come here. And then how do we actually attract talent to come to Nanaimo, and how do we make sure people stay? So when you've been to VIU and you've got your degree, make sure that there's actually an opportunity to keep you in the community, that you don't leave and go somewhere else. So social capital was a new one. They probably wouldn't have seen in other strategies, but because of our work with the Health and Housing Task Force, and I think through Reimagine Nanaimo and the feedback we get from the community, we know how important it is to make sure we look after our more vulnerable citizens, and we realize that that has an impact on the economy of the city and the image of the city. It's very important. So we have 4 areas in here: building on strategic partnerships, and that's making sure that we work with VIHA, Island Health. We work with BC Housing. We work with our nonprofit partners in this community who deliver important services to make sure that we're, again, maximizing all the opportunities that are there. The healthcare capacity, again, is an important one, making sure that Victoria doesn't take all the specialists, and then Nanaimo is an area. People don't have to travel. They can come to Nanaimo, and we have capacity whether it's in the ICU or cancer or other areas. And then for economic reconciliation, the Chamber and SNAMO have been working hard on this the last year and a half on developing kind of the indigenomics and making sure that we have economic reconciliation as an important part of our strategy, and that we've included that in there as well. So business development, again, is a very important area for economic development, and Amrit, Ms. Manhouse does a huge amount of work in this area in terms of compiling data and making reports available and studying sectors so that we can help businesses understand how the environment in which they operate in and the opportunities they may not be aware of. We talked about the idea of more import-export and trade opportunities in the community. The positive business climate, you'll see some specific actions in there about how we can go about that. We're always working on that. Certainly never something we'll be content with. We're always going to try to make Nanaimo the most positive business experience possible. The strategy talks about the BRE program, or the Business Retention and Expansion, and the opportunity there is for the city and the agency to get out into the community and liaise with our businesses, understand what's working well for them, understanding what we can do better, bringing opportunities to them they may not be aware of. Ms. Manhouse last year, 2 years ago now, time flies, we did a home-based business review and updated our home-based business regulations, and there's an opportunity to plug into those 2,000 plus businesses?
Yes.
4,000? 2,000?
Yeah.
I think it's 2,000.
Yeah, it's just over 2,000.
Yeah. To plug into those businesses to make sure that there's opportunities for them to grow and actually leave being home-based businesses and actually become larger businesses. And then this is an important element in a lot of economic development strategies these days, and I think the pandemic has probably emphasized this. A lot of 4.6, the economic emergency preparedness and recovery, came from the wildfires that we had in the interior, and the recognition that how important that is to be ready for those and be able to respond. The pandemic has certainly highlighted that as well, so this is something we want to make sure we've included and focus on. Oops. And in terms of innovation and technology, again, this has always been an important area for ECDEV, and certainly is in this strategy as well, making sure that we connect the tech sector. The ecosystem is a really important piece, and I know NEDC worked to spend a lot of time working on this, and Innovation Island does, and Libby's been working on this too, and Ms. Manhouse through the FICETA group, worked on this to try to attract technology to the island and kind of building out that ecosystem to make it a little bit more resilient and stronger and grow it and leverage technology and all those good opportunities. So that's in our strategy. And then I think normally in a lot of economic development strategies, number 6 would probably be, and these are in no particular order, but quite often number 6 would be your number 1. It'd all be about business attraction. And I think the message we heard from the task force members was we certainly want to make sure we do business attraction, but we want to kind of get things organized at home first, and we want to make sure we have products to present to people, and we have systems in place, and we have the business climate that makes it an easy environment for people to come in here and do business. So certainly that'll be an important aspect of the agency's work going forward, and as a community as we roll into the strategy in the coming months and years ahead. I have a next step slide farther down, but these were some of the priorities that Lionsgate had identified in their report for year 1, and that was obviously, we'll get to the actual specifics of next steps at the end of this, but setting up the agency is obviously a very important piece. The passenger ferry is a critical project for the city, has been for a decade, continues to be. I think everyone around this table will continue to work to get that operational. Health and housing initiatives are really important. Again, this year, we're working on 4 supportive housing projects right now, potentially a 5th, and a navigation center for our vulnerable population, as well as you might be aware, the warming centers have opened up. So we're always working on with our nonprofit partners to make sure that we're doing our best to take care of those citizens. We're continuing to work at Port Drive in terms of getting a rezoning done and moving forward with disposition opportunities and the Waterfront walkway in Departure Bay. The development process is never perfect, and Alan Nielsen's actually doing a service review of our building permit function right now, and he's going to have some recommendations for council soon on that. And we have the transportation logistics hub opportunity with the port and airport and everyone else on the task force who's interested to kind of really take advantage of the wonderful location and infrastructure we have here. So that was the implementation time frame that Lionsgate gave us. I'm not going to go through each of those. They're quite specific. I did ask Lionsgate to prepare a work plan specifically for this year, and that's our 3rd item on the agenda, so I'm not going to talk about that specifically right now, but that's on the, we'll discuss that in a little bit. So Chair, that's what I had for this part of the presentation on the strategy itself.
Okay. So we'll open it up if anybody has any questions, thoughts, etc. Okay, Andre?
Just a quick, Chair, just a quick question. How was the account? I didn't see the presentation.
I didn't quite catch that.
How was it received? How was the presentation received at council?
Oh, my personal opinion was I thought it was received quite well. There was the emphasis of making sure that when we're going forward, we're thinking of the donut economy and our social and environmental responsibilities, but overall, I thought the council was very pleased.
I don't want to speak for council.
Oh, but we supported it.
You did, yes, absolutely, yeah, no, I didn't.
Unanimously, so I think that says it all.
I didn't hear too much, I heard positive feedback.
But Mr. Turley may want to add.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. Yeah, it went very well. There was a bit of confusion over when the donut economy was mentioned. I still haven't had time to read it thoroughly to figure out where it fits in this whole process. But I'm convinced, and I'm still convinced until I prove myself wrong, that what we discussed from this report fits right in with what the goal of the donut economy is. I just have trouble with the name. I think I mentioned that very vocally, I think. Mind you, I was having a bad day that day because Mary Ann wasn't getting good news. So.
Thank you. I'm having a hard time with vision with my cataracts and glasses. I'm not seeing anybody.
I don't see anyone. Chair, I'm just wondering, Ms. Madhass, do you want to use the microphone?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that we also received some feedback from our arts and culture group. So Julie Beavan, she is the manager of culture and events. And so we want to thank her she read the whole document cover to cover and gave us some feedback, so that's really great. We were able to incorporate majority of the changes that she has suggested. And many of those changes were really around referencing arts and culture in the economic development strategy wherever possible, and I think that's something we may have overlooked. And so it's nice to be able to have that there so that that community, when they read the strategy, can see themselves in it. So that was really good feedback. So majority of those changes have been incorporated. Just a couple of them we are not specifically incorporating because they're specific projects, but we will get, and they're specific projects to do with arts and culture. But the intent of the economic development strategy is for partnerships wherever it makes sense. So it's actually something we're going to be able to do with them without specifically naming that particular project in there. So yeah, it was just want to thank Julie for the feedback, and we'll incorporate that into the strategy.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, is this really becomes our last meeting?
Councillor Turley and
Oh.
Kathy.
Councillor Turley and then Kathy. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question about the last comments about arts and culture. Are we talking the cultural industries, which takes a broader perspective, or is it just arts and culture? And if we could change it to the cultural industries, I think that then it includes a much broader perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amber.
So I'm happy to share her comments back with you if you would like, just to make sure that we have everything right. Basically, what she has mentioned, I've made sure that it's incorporated in there. She was specifically talking about all the arts and culture assets that we have, making sure that we are recognizing them specifically instead of sort of having broad explanations for assets that we have, but making sure that we are really capitalizing on the fact that we have a very robust arts and culture sector here, and that we are actually capitalizing on that when we're trying to attract young people here or new artists here, creative class talent here. So just making sure that it's in the strategy. So
Thank you.
thanks.
And Councillor Turley. You're muted.
Hit the wrong button. You hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So the question I have is around the generating options for reconciliation, and I seem to recall at one point the airport was kind of in a bit of a torn position because they sit in the Chemainus First Nation area, and then I see in the report under 3.4.1 that it's the name of Sonalis and the Chemainus band, and I seem to recall that the proposed, at least the border that the bands consider as the border is the Nanaimo River, which of course would put Duke Point in the Chemainus band. Is that why they're included now, or did I miss something?
Mr. Course.
Thank you, Councillor Turley. No, you're just very sharp in catching that. We did have a discussion with Dave Devanna about the airport's involvement, because their lands are in the traditional territory of the Chemainus First Nation, and he was concerned. He's had a chat with his board, and he's happy to be involved in the strategy. He feels the airport needs to be involved, and he's going to work with the Chemainus First Nation on that. Whether we should have that specifically in our strategy, that might be something we might want to. I think we want to make sure our primary relationship is with Sonaimo and Sonalis, and the Chemainus would be a important but ancillary relationship until we've established those other two first. So, I'm at the task force discretion if you'd like to amend that specific sentence or not.
Back to you, Mr. Turley.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with it. I just, the last I heard was creating an issue with the airport. So if they are included, then that issue goes away. But then I don't know if we're treading on toes in communities like Ladysmith and Duncan, Cowichan area. So, but I'm quite happy to have it. It's just, I guess, concern over what if any fallout would be there.
Yeah, thank you. What Mr. Devanna told me was that there's a parcel of land adjacent to the airport that the Sinamis First Nation owns, and they're working in partnership with them to develop that. So I guess I come from the school of thought that the more partnerships, the better. The more you work with people, the better. So if there's an opportunity at the airport that benefits the airport and benefits Sinamis and also benefits the city and our other partners at the table, then that's probably a good thing.
And if I may, and if they own a portion of it, they have some skin in the game, right? They're part of it.
Yeah, so we're not discussing the agency right now. We're just
No.
discussing lands around the airport.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which we're not.
Yeah, no, I get that, but I'm just saying why inclusivity
Yes.
is a good thing. Anybody else? See anybody else? So this is our last meeting?
Yes, this is item 1 on the agenda.
Okay, yeah, no, I know, I'm right, but we're moving on to these. I'll make some remarks at the end of the meeting then.
Yeah, so Chair, what I'd like to do is, if there are no other comments on the strategy itself, the recommendation we have in the staff report is that the task force recommend that council endorse the economic development strategy. I'd like to amend that to say the economic development task force recommend council endorse the economic development strategy with the revisions discussed at the meeting. And that would give Ms. Manhouse and myself a chance to make those small tweaks in terms of the culture, as well as the piece we have on the tourism front.
Okay,
So that would be, again, very minor tweaks to the overall strategy, but it would just let us make a final change before that goes to council.
do I have a mover? Kathy?
No, I think that they don't have a question.
Are you question or moving, Kathy? I can't hear it.
You're muted.
Is there in the report a way, I know you've got the acknowledgement of that we sit on the ceded territory, and is there typically in these types of reports, is there acknowledgement of the committee that worked on it and the council participation in it? Is that an acknowledgement that's typical of these types of reports? So that you would list in it the members of the task force and the members of council who participated as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Only if it's traditional for you to do that.
I've seen it before.
That's good.
Yep. No, I have seen it before, Kathy. Does anybody wish to move the motion, the recommendation?
I'll move it.
Doug's moving, Bob's seconding. All those in favor? Motion passes. Thank you, everybody. We will move on to the second item on the agenda, which is the Economic Development External Agency Corporation Charter. And Mr. Corson.
Thanks, Chair. So I'm just going to, I know we spent quite a lot of time talking about the agency, and, but again, just want to make sure we're all on the same page. There's, where we last, I'll just maybe go through the key highlights of the agency. I think we're aware of them, but I'll just, for the folks at home who may be watching, let them understand what they're doing with the agency itself. So the purpose of the agency is to be the economic development corporation through which business, government, First Nation, and community partners collaborate to build Nanaimo's economy and increase the level of shared prosperity enjoyed by those who live here. The mandate is to maintain and update the economic development strategy, develop and undertake initiatives to attract business and employers to the community, coordinate the sector-specific activities, and develop initiatives to retain and expand business. The agency itself is owned by the City of Nanaimo and our Class B shareholders, which are Nanaimo Airport, the Chamber of Commerce, the Port Authority, Nanaimo First Nation, and Vancouver Island University. The The board of directors would have 9 voting directors, so that's 6 if you include the city and its partners, and then 3 would be appointed. We've had discussion about one of those appointees being from the social side of things to tie in with the Health Housing Task Force recommendations. So there would be that individual, as well as 2 other directors who'd be appointed by the board. In terms of funding, the city is the main funder, what we call the Class A shareholder. And then the Class B shareholders, we've had discussions with them last week, would bring, this year in 2021, would bring $5,000 in cash or in-kind contribution. And going forward, would do a $10,000 cash or in-kind contribution in 2022 through to 2025, subject to their approval from their respective boards. And that is what Mr. Nielsen recommended in his report. When we did the work, he said $50,000 between the partners, and looks like we were able to get there. The board members, there is no remuneration for their service, but we'll make sure they're kept busy, very busy. And then the idea is that, and I remember Mr. Rudolph making this comment maybe 3 or 4 meetings ago, just how important it was to give this agency a chance to be successful. It really needed a 5-year period, after which point, and commitment, and after which point we'd be reviewed, and we could see if we need to make any amendments to the agency at that point in time. I don't know if there's any specific comments people have about that. There we go. There's the funding piece, board of directors. And yeah, so that's kind of it on the agency. In terms of next steps, the agency is an important piece in moving forward with that. And on February 1st, the idea is to take the economic development strategy and the agency charter to council for their endorsement, after which we would then call a meeting of the Class B shareholders together, and we would start working on the significant amount of work that needs to be done to actually set up the agency, whether that's the letters of incorporation, the policy documents, all that work. And then they'd also, of course, have to select those 3 additional voting members. And then once we actually had letters of incorporation ready to go, we'd come back to council for approval. I assume each of the board members might go back to their respective organizations as well, just to get approval for that point in time. And then we'd have an inaugural board meeting. At that point, then we could look at, of course, all the logistics of actually who you're going to hire and finding space, etc. I don't know if it's ambitious, but I'm hoping that we're in a spot where by the summer we've got the agency is incorporated, and we've had board meetings, and we're in the position to be hiring someone at that point. So that's kind of the timeline I have in my head, but certainly task force members are welcome to provide their feedback. And if you're a Class B shareholder, you're going to be very busy between now and the summer as well.
Just a question regarding the naming of the corporation. I know we had discussion whether it should be an agency or a corporation. Have we landed on one or the other? Or do we
There you go.
So the question from Bob was, have we landed on a name for the corporation or the agency? I don't really feel we have, so that's why I've been kind of vague. I haven't called it the Nanaimo Prosperity Agency, and I remember we did kind of map out a different name at one point. I thought what we should do is probably get the Class B shareholders together, and at that meeting they can decide what they wish to call their organization. Unless the task force wishes to have it branded today, we can certainly send it off with a name. I know Alan, in Mr. Nielsen's report, he does call it the Nanaimo Prosperity Agency. I like the word prosperity, but obviously we have the overlap with the Nanaimo Port Authority, and want to be cognizant of that confusion that could cause.
I would just again say my vote would be corporation versus agency. I think, given people we're working with and approaching, it might sound a little bit more
Formal.
and on the same level.
Serious.
Yeah. just by personal vote.
And then it'd be MPC, Nanaimo Prosperity Corporation, BMPC instead of MPA. Problem solved. Do I have, yes, Jason, and then Kathy.
Thank you. Just wondering, Bill, if I understood you correctly, there is an understanding that once this is finalized through council, that our board would then have to have a copy of it and vote on it and approve the expenses. Did I hear that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, so this is to get it to council so that then you can go back to your board, your respective boards and say, council's provided direction to proceed with this. Or your specific board, are you interested in participating in this? Here's the arrangement. And you get your approval, and then we come back to our council for the approval of the incorporation piece.
Kathy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just two real quick questions. Is the only fundamental change adding that from the last time we discussed is adding in the social services position on the board? I know we talked about a bunch of amendments, but that seems to be the kind of primary change. And then my second question is, and this may not be appropriate for this table, so disregard it if not, but when we go out and recruit the actual appointees of each of these partners, do they need to have a primary person and a secondary so that there's always representation at the meetings, or is that something that the group will decide when it gets to the next point? So you'd have a definite and an alternate.
Okay. I think the first question you had, Kathy, you were talking about the board members, including one from social services?
Yeah.
That's there in the next steps.
Okay, no, I'm happy with it. I just wondered if that's the fundamental difference from the last time we saw this and talked about it.
I think so.
Yes, and then the other piece was the confirming the funding. So when we left the last meeting, we hadn't had a chance to circle back with the Class B shareholders to confirm their interest in continuing, and we were able to do that. So, and then the specific conversation around that was some of our Class B shareholders are able to make the contribution in cash, and others are in a position where they can make that through an in-kind contribution. So we just wanted to clarify that language in the agency charter as well, that it's a contribution through cash or in kind.
Kim. And was it Mr. Tully?
No,
Oh, Kim?
Thank you, Zemi. My question is along the same lines as Jason's. Are we going to have a meeting at which we agree upon the proposal and the wording of that proposal that goes back to our boards, so that we're all taking the same document, so that we've reviewed very carefully what some concerns or issues might be? Do we go to that stage, or do we have that document now compiled?
So through the chair, I believe this document's a good starting point. I would recommend that we'd have a meeting with the Class B shareholders to discuss about what you as the shareholders need to take to your respective boards, and we can create the necessary documents. And I know William and I have had some conversations about VIU's level of risk and how they want to be involved. So I think it'd be good to have all the shareholders together so we're on the same page as to what we're actually asking for and the liability that the Class B shareholders are taking on by entering into the organization.
Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone want to move the recommendation? So, Kim, moving, seconded Andre? Seconded Andre, all those in favor? All those opposed? It carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, well done. On to last part of our agenda, which is the in-house and external agency 2021 work plan. Mr. Corson.
Thank you, Chair. So knowing this group, and I wanted to make sure that when you left today, you had a sense that work was going to get done, and that we were going to be moving forward with projects, and you weren't just saying, okay, I remember I went to our last meeting and then nothing happened for a year. So I asked Lionsgate Consult to put together a work plan just for 2021, and I would call it a guideline, but it's there to help Ms. Manhouse and myself kind of help prioritize things we're going to do in the first part of the year, and then in the middle of the year we'll be in a position where through our resourcing we should have an in-house manager to add to the economic development team, as well as the agency starting to ramp up as well. So Mr. Nickel, on the very final page, what he does is he kind of goes through the staffing resources and the time available. So you can see he's figured out how many days are actually available to do the work, and then he works backwards. So he always gives us a very ambitious work plan, which is good because you don't want to be underwhelmed. So, but this is for your information, I'd suggest. If there's specific things that are in here that you think we're missing, certainly very happy to amend it. But the idea was this helps us internally with our internal function to get going, and we can also hand this to the agency and say, here's some of the things we can hand to the new executive director and say, here's where we think you should get going for the rest of the year.
All right.
Yeah.
Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Chair. So I don't know if this is an appropriate question to ask right now, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Under 1.0 economic capital on page 4, 1.3 vitalization downtown on the waterfront. Item C, complete the feasibility study and functional design of the development of the Archer Bay Waterfront Walkway. That's not currently being done by the Economic Development Department, is it?
Yeah, good point, Chair. So I think you'll find a lot of the items in here. When we say city, I do mean city. So it's the broader city, and it's not just the economic development section of the city. It's the organization as a whole. Yeah.
Yeah, I was concerned that if everything had to come from our budget with the economic development, it might be a little stretched.
No, it has its own funding source. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
If I may comment, it's interesting though, because it is called the Nanaimo Economic Development Work Plan, right? And it's misleading a bit.
What we asked him to do was to base the work plan on the strategy. So all these items that are in this work plan come from the strategy.
Okay.
And that was an important piece, so that you could see the strategy was getting worked on. And again, the strategy relies on partnerships and relies on other city departments working together to deliver the strategy.
Okay, thank you. And this is for informational.
Yes, I will, unless people wish to.
Have any further comments? And I'm just looking to see who's in, that is Jason, and then Mr. Turley.
Thank you. Just wondering, in this document, are we the NPA?
Correct. But VIU is not VIU, it's actually some other acronym.
Okay. So what NA?
Nanaimo Airport.
Thank you.
And Jim.
Thank you, Chair. Mine is just a question. I probably should know what this is, but I profess I don't. Under the robust broadband connectivity, item 1.5.2B, it refers to work with Connected Coast Initiative. I'm professing I don't know what that is.
Yeah. I do.
Oh, good.
I think that was at our last RDN meeting.
No, that's why I don't know anything about it. Okay.
Yeah, it was they had a presentation. No, I don't think it's just one of, you might be able to explain it better, Mr. Corson, but
Yeah, so
what recently came up.
So the Strathcona Regional District was able to secure this very large grant to actually circumnavigate Vancouver Island and the coast with a fiber optic connection from the Harbour Centre in
Yes.
downtown Vancouver, which provides the communities on Vancouver Island and the coast with a very high level of internet service that higher than you actually get through the commercial providers. And what they're obligated under their contract is to provide a gateway or a tie-in point in each community. And then it's up to the community to decide how they, when they tie in or how they tie in. And you can use their services if you wish to set up a utility, or at our discretion, we can set up our own utility and provide fiber. So that just came, and again, this is what's very interesting with these strategies is that this came up in the fall.
Right.
In September, we were approached by the Connected Coast. From an Nanaimo perspective, we're very fortunate because we're actually, again, the hub of that whole connection. So it comes over from the Harbour Centre to Nanaimo, and then Nanaimo has dual redundancy because it splits in Nanaimo and heads south and around the island, and it heads north. So some of the folks at the Port Authority are obviously involved in this because it's in the harbour, and we had discussions about this earlier in the fall. And so there's an opportunity to bring it close to the downtown core, and where we have a larger concentration of commercial offices and uses. And then and you'll see in our strategy, we talk about the idea of creating a downtown, there's an opportunity potential to create a downtown fiber optic service. Potentially that runs out to VIU, to Sonema, to the hospital. So a very exciting opportunity.
Yeah. And there was a presentation on the RDN meeting, the last meeting we had. They did a whole 10, 15-minute presentation PowerPoint on it.
I think Jason.
Who's it?
Jason.
Jason?
Jason. Sorry.
I think you just throw the name in the hat there perhaps for the port to help with any tourism, if we could, or participate in tourism component, if that's possible, if it's reasonable to ask.
Yes, of course. The Mr. Rudolph and I were talking about page 6, the urban tourism product. And again, this is an area we would just need to revise based on the current situation with tourism. And again, a lot of this stuff is still relevant. Certainly the idea of tourism product development in Nanaimo is very important. But just wanted to raise that with you, that this section will be revised accordingly.
Right. Thank you. So I don't see any further speakers. Did anybody wish to move the motion? Oh, there was no motion on this one. Okay. It's only 2:00. We might get out early. No other speakers? And I just want to say thank you to everybody who's been on this task force. Thank you on behalf of Councillor Turley and myself for all the time that you've made and the energy you've put into this. I think that we've got some good economic development planning happening here, and I'm excited to get on with actions and creating this, whether it's a corporation or an agency. I lean towards corporation as well. But I just wanted to say, really, I think this has been great collaborative work, and I thank you all. So.
Thank you, Chair.
And anybody moving for adjournment? Move for adjournment, Kim, seconded by William. All those in favor? Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year, thanks.
Wow, okay.